Julian Astor's new little girlfriend didn't quite understand the rules. She actually dared to show up at the kindergarten gates to force a confrontation. Mrs. Astor, the one who isn't loved is the real other woman. I looked at the beautiful and foolish woman before me. My expression a mixture of pity and amusement. The kind you'd give a simpleton. Hilarious. What did I need his love for? This life of scheduled payments and not having to wait on a man was just too good to be true. What a beautiful little idiot. The woman's stunning combination of beauty and foolishness made me laugh. And a curse escaped my lips. My daughter, already in her last year of kindergarten, looked the flamboyantly dressed woman up and down. As she walked past her, she let out a small sigh and said in her sweet, childish voice, "Daddy's taste is getting so tacky these days." The ultimate insult. The young woman's eyes turned red with anger. It was a truly pitiful sight, so moving that I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Once in the car, Arya Astor placed her small backpack to one side, crossed her arms, and looked at me. "Mommy, when are you and Daddy going to get a divorce?" "Oh, you actually want Mommy and Daddy to get a divorce? Aren't you afraid other kids will make fun of you for not having a father?" I gripped the steering wheel, glancing at the rearview mirror. What's the difference? He might as well be 0 right now. Anyway, that's true. I nodded in complete agreement. And, think about it, Mommy. Arya stood up and leaned over my seat, persuading me. "You're young and beautiful, and I'm about to start elementary school. We don't need a man who's a husband in name only. We're doing just fine on our own." "We are. But there's something I'd miss." Arya's cute face took on a look of utter shock. "Mommy, what could you possibly miss about him? It's a good year if he spends even 3 full days with us." Pfft. "I'd miss his money." "Of course." I gave Arya a quick peck on her cheek. "So full of collagen and perfectly bouncy." Arya pouted, sat back in her seat, and said, "I guess that's true. Even though Daddy keeps a flock of aunties on the side, he's still pretty generous to us." "Exactly. Your beautiful Mommy, at best, can only earn $2,000 a month. Daddy may be unfaithful, but he's generous. Where else are we going to find a cloud-based father who makes regular deposits into our account every month?" I steered the car and pulled up in front of a small courtyard filled with blooming flowers. Getting out of the car, I took Arya's backpack and held her soft little hand. "But Mommy, aren't you sad?" Arya stopped and looked up at me seriously. I crouched down to her eye level, my voice gentle but firm. "Arya, sadness requires caring. And the only person I care about, besides myself, is you." Arya planted a loud kiss on my cheek and skipped into the house. Watching her small figure, I let out a soft sigh. The evening sun cast a golden glow on the rose bushes in the garden. And for a moment, I was transported back to when I first met Julian Astor. My marriage to Julian was very much like the fairy tales people love to tell. The story of Cinderella and the prince. At the time, I was young, beautiful, and read, a well-known academic goddess at the university. And Julian Astor was the heir to the Sterling Group, the city's largest conglomerate. We met at an alumni event. Julian, as a distinguished graduate, made a special appearance, and I was the host of the event. After that, Julian began a fierce pursuit, but I politely and gracefully declined each time. From the beginning, I knew that the only real asset I had was my looks. And for someone like Julian, I was just a passing fancy, a fleeting novelty. The drama of life lies in the fact that before it presents you with a beautiful sea of roses, it always lays a path of thorns. As I said, I was Cinderella, a sick mother, a long, dead father, a broken. But I wasn't broken. Instead, I grew like a weed, tough and resilient. From the start of university, my various scholarships were enough to cover my living expenses and tuition. I also wrote fiction in my spare time, earning a little pocket money. Every year before my mother's birthday, I would save up a small sum and give it to her as a gift. Having relied on each other for years, I knew better than anyone that money was more useful than any frivolous present. Then, dramatically, in my sophomore year, my mother was diagnosed with liver cancer. The transplant surgery would cost at least $50,000. After the diagnosis, my mother decided to forego treatment. "Vivian, let's not do it. I haven't been able to give you much as it is. I can't leave you with a mountain of debt when I'm gone." I hadn't cried in a long time. That day, after hanging up the phone with my mother, I lay on my dorm bed and cried silently for a long time. As it happened, Julian called again to ask me out to dinner. This time, I didn't refuse. Sitting in the passenger seat of Julian's car, I Googled the price of a Rolls-Royce. The numbers on the screen, even just a fraction of the total, were enough for my mother's surgery. Have you been crying? Julian, still with a touch of youthful charm back then, was tall and handsome, his tone cautious and gentle. Yes. Is it that obvious? I said with a bitter smile. Did something happen? Julian asked, feigning concern. My mother was diagnosed with liver cancer. The surgery costs $50,000. I said calmly. Julian raised an eyebrow, a faint smile playing on his lips. So, that's why you agreed to come out with me today. I know this is very forward, but borrowing from you is the fastest way. I chose my words carefully, my heart pounding with uncertainty. I was afraid that if I angered him, my mother's chances of survival would plummet. You're very smart. Julian tapped a long finger on the steering wheel, then smiled. But do you have the ability to pay it back? I bit my lip. I might not be able to pay it all back at once, but I can do it in installments over a few years. And you can charge me the standard interest. Actually, there's a simpler way. Julian freed one hand and placed it over mine. How about being my girlfriend? He asked with a smile. Mr. Astor, are you saying that if I become your girlfriend, I won't have to pay back the $50,000? I looked down at my hand, now covered by his, and asked in a low voice. That's right. If you agree now, I can transfer the money to you immediately, Julian said, his smile confident. Aren't you afraid I'm a scammer? I hesitated. It's only $50,000. Only $50,000. In that moment, I truly felt the vast chasm that separated our worlds. I genuinely like you, Vivian. If you agree to be my girlfriend, I can also arrange for the best doctors to treat your mother. How about it? Julian's voice was persuasive as he gently kissed the back of my hand. Okay. When I heard my own voice, my mind was still blank. Payment received. $50,000. As the robotic voice announced the transfer from my phone, the gears of fate began to turn. From that day on, I became Julian Astor's girlfriend. One of them. Mommy, what are you thinking about? Arya rested her chin in her hands, watching me. I looked down at the mashed potatoes I had poked into a sieve, like mess, and smiled. Nothing. Just thinking that my Arya's birthday is next month. What do you want for your birthday? I want you and Daddy to get a divorce. And then find me a new dad who's 6 feet 2 inches, has an 8-pack, and is loyal and handsome. Arya Astor counted on her soft fingers, speaking with utmost seriousness. I raised an eyebrow. The little one certainly had high hopes. Setting aside whether such a perfect new dad even existed, Julian wouldn't divorce me so easily. Not because he loved me, but because he considered me the most suitable candidate for Mrs. Astor. Gentle, beautiful, poised, well educated, emotionally stable, able to please his mother. And most importantly, I never interfered with his affairs and could even get along with his mistresses. How about something a little more realistic? Sweetie, where am I supposed to find a new dad of that caliber? I chuckled and turned to prepare the sauce. Sigh. Vivian, you're really wasting that pretty face of yours. Does not wasting it mean I have to be in a relationship? Can't I just appreciate myself? Little one. I poured the fried meat sauce over the mashed potatoes and said with a light laugh. Not necessarily. I just don't want to hold my favorite mommy back, Arya said, pulling out her small dining chair with a casual air. I placed the plate of mashed potatoes on the heat. Resistant Matt Arya had set out and patted her fluffy little head. How could you? I'm raising you now, and when I'm old, you'll raise me. It's only fair, Arya, scooping a large spoonful of potatoes into her pineapple-shaped bowl, said between bites. Mommy, that's emotional blackmail. So don't worry about all that useless stuff. The most important thing is to live well in the present. Julian walked in at that moment. Arya looked up, glanced at him, and said with polite detachment, Daddy's home. I went to the entryway and found him a pair of men's slippers. They hadn't been worn in so long that they were covered in a fine layer of dust. I brushed them off, placed them on the floor, and said, What brings you here today? Julian, dressed impeccably in a suit, slipped on the slippers, wrapped an arm around my waist, kissed my cheek, and smiled. I heard my dear wife was angry, so I've come to atone for my sins. He handed me a small gift box. Inside lay 6 neat, 20-gram gold bars. I closed the lid and smiled sweetly. Thank you, darling. TSK. TSK. Such a little gold digger. Not angry anymore. Julian pinched my cheek, his voice cheerful. Your little flings. When have I ever given them a hard time? Nina, Candy, and Coco still ask me out to movies and for manicures. But your new girl this time went too far. She actually cornered Arya at the kindergarten. You know, you can harass me, no problem. But Arya is my bottom line. I stroked the small gold bars, speaking calmly. I know, Mrs. Astor. Don't be angry. I've already had my secretary give her a severance payment. If you don't like her, I'll just replace her. Julian's smile was handsome, his tone tinged with a casual sort of indulgence, as if he were discussing the weather. Daddy, I think it's Jack's birthday tonight, Arya said from the dining table, not looking up from her food. Oh, you're right. I completely forgot, Julian said, pulling out his phone, his voice annoyed. I went to the storage closet and took out a wrapped gift box, handing it to him. This is the latest model PSP. Jack should like it. Sigh. What would I do without you? Vivian. Julian kissed my forehead, took the gift, and transferred me $520. Thanks, honey. I have to go. And just like that, after 6 months, Julian spent less than 5 minutes with Arya and me, and I received 620-gram gold bars and a 520 transfer, a total of about 7,000. Arya walked over, weighed the small box of gold bars in her hand, and said calmly, I think Daddy has another good quality. He occasionally drops some coin. I wholeheartedly agreed. Ever since I started treating Mrs. Astor as a job title, my state of mind, along with my growing bank balance, has become increasingly peaceful. I was at Arya's graduation ceremony when Nina called. The Astor family had wanted to send Arya to an elite kindergarten, but at my insistence, she was enrolled in a public one. It was the only request I had ever made of Julian. Given my years of good behavior, he didn't refuse, just had a word with the principal beforehand. So, although Arya's identity as the daughter of the city's wealthiest man was hidden, the school's administration would still occasionally extend a friendly hand, showing a particular warmth towards me. It wasn't exactly what I had envisioned, but at least it was a first step. From the moment I married Julian, I knew this marriage wasn't about love. It was the result of a power play between Julian and the Sterling Group's chairman, his late father, and that meant this marriage wouldn't last. Therefore, I hoped that my child and I could face a normal life with ease after leaving the Astor family. Divorcing Julian wouldn't be easy. Until he showed signs of losing interest in me, I couldn't afford to lose face for him. It wasn't just about the stable source of income, but more about his power in the city. It was too easy for the Astor family to crush someone. As Mrs. Astor, I had witnessed people who crossed Julian fall from grace and be trampled into the dust. The fact that Julian could smoothly take over the Sterling Group, quietly dealing with all the ambitious relatives, illegitimate children, and other dissenters, was proof that he was not just a playboy indulging in women. He had a type: clear-headed, tactful, and intelligent women who knew their place. Of course, there were exceptions, like the one who confronted me at the kindergarten. Occasionally, a young woman, her appetite whetted by material possessions, would mistakenly believe she was special to Julian and make a poor decision. Vivian, I think Mr. Astor has taken a liking to a college student recently. Nina's voice on the other end of the phone was calm. As one of Julian's longest-standing mistresses, she was happy to share some intelligence with me. Oh, which university? Seaview University. A sophomore. I hear she's a top student. Very beautiful. And looks a bit like you. Nina's tone was hesitant. I could almost hear a hint of pity. Is that so? How interesting. My gaze fell on Arya in her black gown. I quickly stood up and waved at her with a wide grin. Arya, very coolly, raised an eyebrow at me, as if to say, I see you. The theme of this year's graduation ceremony was environmental protection, and the kindergartners were all wearing gowns their parents had made from recycled materials. For Arya's gown, I drew inspiration from a historical drama's black dress with white flowers. I have to say, it was quite photogenic. Vivian. I think Mr. Astor is serious this time. You should prepare yourself. I sent you some photos on Messenger. After hanging up, I didn't rush to open my messages. Instead, I opened my camera and started taking a flurry of pictures of my Aria. Only after I had taken enough photos did I leisurely open my messages. In the photos, Julian and the young woman were holding hands, each with a cup of bubble tea, something he despised, and wearing matching couples outfits, which he had never worn before. Julian had indeed never shown such a boyish smile in front of me. It was as if he were a young man experiencing his first love. But what surprised me most was that the girl was a 9/10 replica of my 6 years younger self. She had long, straight black hair, while I had naturally curly black hair. That was our only difference. After the graduation ceremony, I took Aria for a photo shoot to commemorate her carefree childhood. During the shoot, I asked Aria which city she would like to live in the future. Aria was a very perceptive child. She sat in front of the makeup mirror, looked at my reflection, and asked calmly, "Mommy, is my birthday wish coming true?" Almost. Half of it. Anyway, I said, tilting my head as I chose my words. "Wherever Mommy goes, I'll go." That night, after Aria had fallen asleep, I quietly checked my bank balance. After our marriage, Julian had faithfully transferred $5,000 to me every month. For the first 3 years, I was a full-time mother to Aria and had no other income, so I could only save about $3,000 to $4,000 a month. For the first 3 years, I devoted myself to caring for Ranran. I had no income, so I could only save around $30,000 to $40,000 each month. After Ranran started kindergarten, I returned to writing and working in new media. My initial income has grown from $1,000 to $2,000 to $10,000 to $20,000, which is more than enough to cover my and Ranran's daily expenses. Lin Yubai is very generous. He gives me red envelopes of $10,000 to $20,000 on our birthdays. And he also gives me a lot of gold coins on Valentine's Day and our anniversary. Now, in the 7th year of our marriage, my bank account held $350,000. To Julian, $350,000 was nothing. Not even enough for a decent sports car. But for me, it was enough for Aria and me to live comfortably for the rest of our lives. This was what had allowed me to remain emotionally stable while wearing a multi-layered crown of green hats for 7 years. Of course, if I could endure until Julian grew old or died, Aria and I could inherit billions. But I was certain that Aria wouldn't like that kind of life. She was like a soft-bodied creature in a hard shell, outwardly calm and composed, but inwardly delicate and sensitive. When she was very young, she had longed for a father's love. But after countless disappointments, she had given up completely and closed her heart. Whenever I thought about this, I felt a pang of guilt. I used to think that perhaps if I had married an ordinary man, my child would have enjoyed a warm, simple, and complete family. Once, Nina sat across from me and, after hearing this, scoffed. "Honey, do you have any idea how many married women dream of having your life? Do you think marrying an ordinary man means the father won't be absent? In half of all households, the man comes home, throws his socks and clothes on the floor, and sprawls on the sofa like a wet rag, doing nothing but scrolling through social media. If you complain, he'll tell you how hard he works, how difficult it is to support the family, and then he'll gaslight you into thinking you're not a good enough wife, that you haven't taken good care of the child and the home." Watching Nina, sipping her coffee and speaking with a casual yet mocking tone, I was at a loss for words. Perhaps, there are men who are loyal to their families, who love their wives and children, and are responsible. It's just that people like us will never meet them. The Bulgari bracelet on Nina's wrist shone with a rich luster, but her exquisitely made-up face held a trace of lifelessness. "Vivian, I envy you," Nina said sadly. "You are Julian Astor's rightful wife, and you don't love him." At the time, I couldn't tell if she envied my status as Mrs. Astor, or my clear-headedness in not loving him. My thoughts returned to the present. I took out my jewelry box, except for the Astor family heirlooms, a ring and a bracelet. I packed everything else up with the gold bars. On my mother-in-law's birthday, I wore an elegant, simple cheongsam that suited the status of Mrs. Aster. My hair in a low bun. Her favorite gentle style. Arya also wore a modern style Cheongsam, looking like a perfectly crafted doll from a poster. My mother-in-law was a devout Buddhist. So every year for her birthday, we went to the most famous vegetarian restaurant in the city. The owner, Mr. Fong, was a respected figure in the Buddhist community, so his restaurant had to be booked 6 months in advance. Starting from Arya's 3rd year, I began making the reservations here, and on holidays, I would send the owner small, thoughtful gifts. Over the years, Mr. Fong had come to remember me, the filial and wealthy Mrs. Aster. At every birthday banquet for my mother-in-law, he would come by to say a few auspicious words and present 2 special dishes, giving me plenty of face. Mrs. Aster Sr., you have a truly wonderful daughter-in-law. She books the best private room for you at the beginning of every year and goes over the menu a month in advance. She's as good as a real daughter. Mr. Fong, dressed in a beige, modern Chinese style linen suit, was fiddling with a string of prayer beads I had given him 2 years prior. Yes, our Vivian is the most filial, much better than my useless son. My mother-in-law, in a dark red Cheongsam with gold embroidery, had lived a life of luxury that had left few marks of age on her face. When she smiled, only a few crow's feet appeared at the corners of her eyes, making her look elegant and kind. Oh, now, Mrs. Aster, if you say that, we'll all have to find a hole to hide in. If Mr. Aster is useless, what does that make the rest of us? Mr. Fong's humorous tone visibly lightened the atmosphere. Julian walked in at that moment, dressed in casual clothes that were completely out of place with his status. Having grown used to seeing him in tailored suits, this youthful, vibrant look was a refreshing change. Mr. Fong didn't treat Julian any differently because of his casual attire. He shook his hand with warmth and respect, offered a string of flattering compliments, and made my mother-in-law beam with joy. What are you wearing? After the door closed, although my mother-in-law was addressing Julian, her sharp gaze flickered towards me. I forced a smile, suppressing my annoyance, and calmly fabricated a story. Julian has been doing research at Seaview University these past few days to better understand the needs of the target market. He's been undercover as a student. I paused, trying to look like a love-struck fool. Mom, don't you think a hands-on CEO like him is incredibly handsome? The expression on my mother-in-law's face softened slightly. She looked at me with a mix of exasperation and fondness. You're the only one who would defend your husband like that. I can't win with you. Oh, it's not fair. Mom, how can you be so elegant and charming even when you're angry? I continued to shower her with compliments, diligently playing my role. Your words are as sweet as honey. No wonder my son is so wrapped around your finger. My mother-in-law chuckled and announced the start of the meal. I smiled gracefully, but inwardly, I was cheering on the college student, hoping she would soon have a child and allow me to abdicate. I had saved up enough capital for a divorce and was getting tired of playing the part of Mrs. Aster. Of course. Look at what a wonderful daughter-in-law I found for you. Julian proudly wrapped his arm around my shoulder, looking at his mother for approval. She responded with an elegant roll of her eyes. Being so close, I could smell the faint fragrance on Julian. Unlike the rich perfumes Coco and the others wore, this was a light, fresh scent. Chanel's Chanso Tendre. Considering his attire, he must have come directly from seeing the college student. I raised an eyebrow, the smile in my eyes deepening. I had a feeling my freedom was getting closer. With that thought, my appetite improved. As was tradition, we would stay overnight at the family estate. After the banquet, a stretch Lincoln took our family back to the villa. Arya was used to this routine and remained calm throughout. As emotionally stable as a hibernating capybara, Julian kept his head down, typing on his laptop. Although he hid it well, the slight furrow of his brow revealed his impatience. I could guess, even with my toes, that the young couple in the throes of new love were feeling the pangs of a brief separation. I raised an eyebrow and started to think of a plausible excuse for Julian to leave tonight, one that his mother would believe. Sure enough, after dinner, Julian told his mother that there was an urgent matter at the company that required his personal attention. My mother-in-law narrowed her eyes, a knowing smile on her face. After a long pause, she let him go, but as his back disappeared through the door, she turned to me with a pointed look. Vivian, Mrs. Astor can only be you. Do you understand? My heart skipped a beat, but on the surface, I smiled as if I were incredibly flattered. Thank you, Mom. My mother-in-law stared at me for a moment, then waved her hand and had a servant help her upstairs. Arya had her own room and was in bed by 9 every night, her routine as regular as an old monk's. I took a relaxing shower and looked at my bank balance, which had now reached 500,000. My mood brightened considerably. I had recently contacted a jeweler I knew and sold all the gold jewelry Julian had given me over the years. In a few days, I would sell the unused designer bags he had given me, which should bring in another nice sum. Julian was good to Arya and me. If I could divorce him on his terms, letting him and his young lover be together, I should be able to get a hefty severance package. The only issue now was Arya's custody. As Julian's only child, the Astor family wouldn't give up custody of Arya easily, unless the college student could give him a son. So I couldn't be too hasty. The girl was still a sophomore. She wouldn't be able to marry Julian and have a child for a while. That meant I had to wait at least another 2 years. Sigh. I closed my phone, changed into my pajamas, and started blow-drying my hair, seriously considering how to make the most of the next 2 years. Just as I put the hairdryer away, Julian suddenly wrapped his arms around me from behind. Before I could ask why he had come back, a flurry of kisses landed on the side of my neck. As Julian went to take a shower, I tried to convince myself that this was a wife's duty. Once or twice a year, Julian would, like a resurrected corpse, have a whim to fulfill his husbandly obligations. But it was fine. All the resentment, grievance, and speechlessness would eventually be soothed by my bank balance. At least I had money. Love can't be eaten, but money can. A new follower named Daydream appeared on my Instagram. Clicking on her profile, her most recent post was a picture of 2 hands clasped together. After 5 years of marriage, I recognized Julian's hand at a glance. The young woman's posts were like a little sun, optimistic, positive, and a bit cute. She was also a good student, had passed all her language and computer proficiency exams, and won scholarships every year. From her selfies, she did look a bit like me. Although I didn't know why Julian would find a lover who looked so much like me. If they could actually make it work, I could make a clean break from the Astor family. So I had to create opportunities for them. This year, our wedding anniversary and a major holiday fell on the same day. So I, being very considerate, signed up for a tour group. I took Nina, Candy, and Coco, along with Arya, on a month-long beach vacation, the main purpose of which was to create a private world for Julian. Arya was on summer break and had been wanting to go to the beach, since she wouldn't have such carefree days after starting elementary school. This was the perfect opportunity. Coco brought Jack along, so Arya had a playmate. After a long journey, we arrived at a quiet seaside town and rented a private villa. Arya and Jack, exhausted from the travel, went to bed early. The 4 of us set up a small barbecue in the courtyard. Candy ordered 4 Starbucks drinks. The delivery was surprisingly fast, the packaging intact, the drinks cold, barbecue and coffee. That's so you, Candy. Nina gave her a thumbs up as she took her coffee. What? We're out with Vivian to have a good time. Right. Besides, Coco and Vivian have to take care of the kids tonight. You don't expect them to have a few drinks with you, do you? Candy said nonchalantly, handing a room temperature coffee to Coco. Coco, I ordered this one for you specifically. Oh, thank you, Candy. Coco took the coffee with a cheerful voice and turned to me. Jack really likes the PSP. Thank you, Vivian. Oh, how did you know I prepared it? I asked, smiling as I took the coffee from Candy. Isn't it obvious? Mr. Astor is a busy man. How would he think of these things? Vivian is the one who picks out all our birthday gifts, Candy said, taking a big sip of her coffee and complaining nonchalantly. Oh, right. This is for you, Vivian, Nina said, as if suddenly remembering something, and handed me a gift box. Inside was a Bulgari Serpenti necklace. I looked at her, surprised. It was a gift from the brand. You can have it, Nina said, sipping her coffee casually, her beautiful face expressionless. Wow, a big star. I want one too. Candy quickly latched onto Nina's arm, her smile sycophantic. Don't be ridiculous. Your #1 fan is about to buy you a villa. You're not short on a few trinkets from me, Nina said, tucking a strand of her chestnut hair behind her ear. Coco just smiled and shook her head, placing 2 grilled skewers on my plate, looking at the 3 beautiful women, each with their own unique charm. I couldn't help but sigh at the strange twists of life. Coco was, in a way, Julian's first love from his school days. He met the girl he wanted to protect most at an age when he had the least to offer. That kind of story. At the time, the Astor family heir hadn't been decided, and Julian's mother certainly wouldn't allow him to make such a foolish mistake. Later, Coco went abroad to study fashion design, her passion, and married a mature and stable designer. Unfortunately, their happiness was short-lived. Her husband died young. She returned to the country, a single mother with a young son, and ran into the now successful Julian. At 15, she had scored a perfect 10 in his heart. He didn't have the power to keep her then, but now that he did, he naturally wanted to make up for the regrets of his youth. I remember when Coco returned with Jack. Julian and I were on our honeymoon. He left me alone in Bali to go pick her up. Of course, with a host of servants, bodyguards, and a lot of money. Nina was an unknown, 18th-tier actress back then. When she heard Julian was going to meet Coco, she flew to Bali specifically to find me. I think our strange friendship started at that moment. As for Candy, a food blogger, she caught Julian's attention after accidentally making a dessert he loved and later became one of his women. Julian had so many women I couldn't count them all. But in the end, only the 4 of us remained. It wasn't so much that we were chosen, but that we had formed a more stable, mutually beneficial relationship. Nina was single, handedly turned into a big star by Julian. In return, the Sterling Group's various endorsements would go to her, creating a stable business relationship. With Julian's help, Coco established her own studio and was now an emerging designer of haute couture. Coco used Julian's influence to make a name for herself, and Julian used her fame to do favors and build connections. As for Candy, Julian funded her own food brand. With her authentic food, sweet looks, and charming personality, she became a well-known figure in the e-commerce live streaming world. Her brand even expanded into a franchise, with the Sterling Group holding a 40% stake, reaping steady profits. Some might wonder, if they were all so successful, why didn't they break free from the disreputable status of being a mistress? The reason was simple. It's easy to give up on illusory love, but not so easy to throw away years of hard work. Besides, with someone like Julian, you never talk about love. We only talked about cooperation, interests, and opportunities for growth. One thing was for sure. Julian always preferred clear-headed, rational, and ambitious women. That was probably why the 4 of us, despite our conflicting roles and different backgrounds, could sit together so peacefully. We all knew what we wanted. Playing the love card with Julian was a losing game. The college student posted something, Candy said, munching on a skewer as she leaned over to look at Nina's phone. Then, she made a face like an elderly person squinting at a screen. This piqued my curiosity. I exchanged a look with Coco and leaned in to see Nina's phone. I hope I'm always your one and only. Your special preference. Your everything. The accompanying pictures were one of 2 hands wearing DR diamond rings, and another of a proposal scene. DR. That's a wedding ring brand, right? Candy asked with a frown. I heard a man can only buy one in his lifetime, Coco said, as if excavating an ancient artifact, and opened her browser to search. Vivian, what do you think? Nina looked at me with concern. A bit ridiculous. Let me take another look. I took the phone, zoomed in on the proposal picture, and then glanced at the comments section. I couldn't help but laugh. The top comment was, "Allow me to introduce my fiancé Sterling Group, Julian Astor." Did he tell you? Coco asked, looking at me worriedly. I calmly shook my head, but my mind was already racing, listing what I wanted. Aria's custody. This was a rare opportunity. I asked Nina if she knew any reliable social media managers. I wanted to get this Instagram post trending. Nina frowned and looked at me for a long time before finally agreeing. We had a wonderful time in the quiet seaside town. While the daydream Instagram post blew up, watching the rising popularity, I knew Julian's hand was probably in it as well. It seemed he really did want a new Mrs. Astor, which was perfect for me. When we returned to the city, Julian, in a rare move, came to pick up Arya and me in his black Bugatti, a task usually left to the driver. How was it, Vivian? Did you have fun? Julian was as suave as ever, showing no signs of any trouble. Yes, we had a lot of fun, Mr. Astor, I replied with a slight smile, emphasizing the Mr. Astor. Julian's smile was indulgent. He even reached out and stroked my hair. Vivian, do you know what I like most about you? I looked up at him, my other hand still holding Arya's soft little hand, and said frankly, that I know when to quit. Exactly. The divorce agreement has been drafted. You can read it in the car. Julian's smile was gentle. He glanced at Arya. Mommy and Daddy are separating. Who do you want to live with? Mommy. Of course, Arya said, with a "do you even need to ask" expression, which made Julian laugh. He tapped her nose and said, you little traitor. Julian gave me a very generous severance package, but custody was not mentioned. I want custody of Arya. I looked up at Julian. He looked a bit helpless. It's not easy to convince my mother. Then I'll have to trouble Mr. Astor to try a little harder. Once I have custody of Arya, I'll sign immediately. That's my only condition. Julian glanced at Arya nestled in my arms in the rearview mirror, sighed, and said he would do his best. But before I heard from Julian, his mother found me. I hear my good for nothing son wants to divorce you for some college student. How could you be so useless? My mother-in-law's chest heaved with anger as she questioned me. To be honest, I had taken the fall for so many absurd things over the years that I was tired of it. Yes, I am useless. I'm preparing to abdicate. I smiled at the well-preserved old woman, my tone surprisingly calm. You, how dare you talk back to me? The audacity. Ma'am, I am simply stating a fact. For years, your son has been the one cheating with different women, and every time, you blame me. I'm tired of taking the blame. My back was straight, my face impassive, my voice soft and gentle. Slap. My head snapped to the side, my left cheek burning. If you get a divorce, you'll never see Arya again. As long as I'm here, that little witch will never set foot in this house. My mother-in-law, her voice booming, finally revealed her tyrannical nature. Mom, her name is Tiffany. Can't you have some class? Julian suddenly rushed over, put his hands on my shoulders, and looked at my swollen cheek with pity. He turned to his mother. Mom, you forced Coco away. You stopped me from marrying Vivian, and now you won't let Tiffany in. You're overstepping. You ungrateful brat. Tomorrow, I'll ruin that home-wrecking little tramp's reputation, and that useless granddaughter of mine. If you two get a divorce, I'll sell her to a trafficking ring. I shot to my feet and threw a glass of water in my mother-in-law's face. You lay one finger on Arya and see what happens. With that, I stormed out and rushed home. When I saw Arya and Jack sitting on the floor, building with Legos, the knot in my chest finally loosened. Coco saw my red, swollen face and silently handed me a cold cloth, leading me out to the small garden. Who hit you? Coco asked with concern. Julian's mother. I answered flatly. Coco had an "I knew it" expression and said nothing more. That evening, Julian returned to our villa with a new divorce agreement. This time, it clearly stated that I would have custody of Arya. He even threw in a Mercedes G-Wagon, saying it would be convenient for me to drive Arya around. I raised an eyebrow. The slap had been worth it. After signing the agreement, Julian and I agreed to go to the city hall the next day to finalize everything. Julian looked at me thoughtfully and then asked casually, "No hug?" I found it a bit comical, but thinking of Arya's custody and our lukewarm marriage, I opened my arms and hugged him back. After a month, I finally got my divorce certificate. The designer bags I had listed on secondhand platforms were almost all sold. Julian also gave me this villa with a small garden. I accepted it all and sold it for $650,000. And so, with a card holding 8 million and a Mercedes G-Wagon. I began my new life at 30. The day I left the city was a bright and sunny afternoon. Familiar streetscapes flashed by. Arya was happy too, because I had bought her a little golden retriever she had been wanting for a long time. The car was filled with Arya's long, lost, cheerful laughter and the puppy's little yaps. The wind from the window carried the scent of fresh grass. I would call it the smell of freedom. I took Arya back to my hometown, a small border town with a slow pace of life, beautiful scenery, and simple, honest people. Every year, on the Day of Remembrance, I would take Arya to visit my mother's grave. The 50,000 from Julian had only sustained my mother for 4 years. Although I had married into wealth and lived a life of luxury on the outside, my mother could always see my unhappiness and often blamed herself for it. But at the time, there was no better, faster way. I have never regretted it. My past self, standing in a fog, was also lost. I could only take it one step at a time. Arya became much more cheerful and made many new friends in this small town. And I became a full-time writer. Besides picking up Arya from school and preparing 3 meals a day, I would write, do my nails, and watch movies in my spare time. In the evening, Arya and I would take our little potato for a walk. He should be called Big Potato now. 4 or 5 years passed in a flash. Nina won a major acting award and announced her retirement from the entertainment industry, leaving her fans devastated. Coco moved abroad and opened her studio in France. But Jack and Arya still kept in touch, occasionally making international calls and receiving gifts from across the sea. Candy didn't do much live streaming anymore. Her franchise had even opened a branch here. I took a picture of it when I passed by. The second time I went to eat there, the owner refused to take my money, saying a mysterious benefactor had paid for me and that I could eat there for free from now on. It scared me so much I never dared to go back. I would occasionally hear news about Julian. He and Tiffany divorced in their 2nd year of marriage, because Tiffany couldn't please his mother and couldn't understand why Julian had to have a string of women by his side. Julian never remarried, but the women in his life never ceased. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. At 20, I made a choice I had to make, and I spent 10 years experiencing the gains and losses that came with it. Now, I have a lovely daughter, a loyal, big dog who loves us with all his heart, and, barring any accidents, enough money to last a lifetime. I love my current life, and I always tell Arya, love yourself first, then love others. Following the mantra, everything that happens is for my benefit. Arya has gradually grown into a girl with a strong inner core, clear-headed and rational. I am very happy. I never hoped for Arya to grow up to be the gentle, sensible, and kind type of girl. Those seemingly beautiful words are no different from emotional blackmail. I hope she will weigh the pros and cons, calculate the gains and losses, and be a romantic and shrewd woman who is happy because she herself is happy. And I have finally become the Vivian I like. Very much.